Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Milford School Committee. Today is Thursday, August 22nd. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast through Milford TV and other media are in attendance. If anyone would like to make a video or audio recording of this meeting, please let me know. The first agenda item for this evening is approval of minutes. We have several sets of minutes tonight that we will be approving, and I would make a recommendation because they are separate from separate meetings. With separate topics, that we would consider them separately, if people are comfortable with that. So the first set of minutes are the minutes from the July 18th regular session. Do we have motion?
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept, second. Second by Meg, all in favor? Okay. Minutes from the July 18th executive session. We have a motion to accept. Motion by Meg, second by John, all in favor? Okay. Minutes of the August 1st executive session. Motion to approve. Oh, Meg was not here, okay.
So we're gonna have to redo that one at the next, we don't have a quorum. Otherwise.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we have 4.
Oh, we have 5 people, I'm sorry, I miscounted.
Yeah.
We're good.
Okay.
I'll motion.
Okay, motion by John, second by Laura, all in favor? Okay, so that's 4 accepting and 1 abstention. Separately, we also have an item on here to release executive session minutes, and that would be for the meetings of 12/20/2018, February 7th of 19, and June 6th of 19. Do we need to take a vote on releasing those, or is that just for our information? I'm not actually sure of that.
I think you take a vote.
Okay. Because they're no longer in executive.
And I don't think you have to be
minutes
necessarily
anymore.
present, you're just accepting that you're releasing the minutes. It's not like,
Okay.
it's not like a regular minute vote, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure.
So do we have a motion to accept the minutes from those 3 executive session meetings? Motion by Meg, second by Laura, all in favor?
1 abstention, I'm not sure if that's the case, so I'd rather
Well,
abstain.
you should because, yes, okay. And 1 abstention, so 4 acceptance and 1
Still gives us a quorum by
abstention.
my math.
All right. Okay, moving right along. That brings us to announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Do we have any announcements? Laura?
I just wanted to share that I was able to attend the open houses today at Brookside and also at Woodland. It was a great turnout. There was a lot of teachers there and students and families, and you could tell a lot of teachers had worked really hard over the summer to get their classrooms ready. So really appreciated that, and meeting some of the new teachers, and my own kids got to meet some of the new faces and friends in their classes, so that was really nice. So I just wanted to say thank you to the administrators and teachers for getting everything ready for that.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Oh.
Laura?
Sorry. So there was not an open house at Shining Star today, so I just wanted to mention that there's a parent orientation night for Shining Star at the high school next Wednesday, and that's in the evening for parents from 6 to 7, and that's Wednesday the 28th, and then the orientation for the students at Shining Star is next Thursday the 29th, and that's during the school day, and you're assigned a certain time based on your class schedule.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other announcements, correspondence? Dr.
I've
McIntyre?
got 2 quick ones. It's kind of along the same lines as Laura's. School opens next week. Students in grades 1 through 12 start on Wednesday, August 28th. Shining Star students start the following week on September 3rd, and our kindergartners start on September 5th. I encourage parents to check the websites and communication from principals and directors, because Laura was saying, there's a number of social events, orientations, open houses, happening in the next several days, so please, check those. Those are great events to kind of be a part of, to get engaged, and to start the school year in a really positive way. Again, the open house was great this morning. The programs have been very well attended so far, and most of our students appear very excited to start. Our teachers are super excited. I've seen a bunch of teachers the last few days setting up their classrooms. They're getting ready for next week, and they're really excited to go. The second thing that I had was I had the opportunity this morning to attend the MCIA board meeting, and typically Craig and Nick Molinari, who's the MTA president, attend these meetings, but because we were hosting, I jumped into this one as well. And 2 of our teachers, Alyssa Holland and Dan Cody from Stacey Middle School, presented some of their projects from the past school year to demonstrate their use of performance tasks. And to say it was impressive is an understatement. The stuff they're doing is awesome, and I've actually invited Dan and Alyssa to join us either in maybe the second September meeting or the first October meeting to kind of share some of the things they're doing and how some of these practices are spreading across the district. Craig, I don't know if you want to comment on it at all.
No, I guess I was just extremely proud of the work that they displayed. We've been going to those meetings for a year, and they were some of the best projects that were shown out of all 7 districts. And I think, Kevin, you can attest to this, that the other districts were truly impressed by the work that they did. And you know, as I've typically found in the other districts, middle school is a really hard place to kind of start this work. And our two teachers were just killing it today, out of the ballpark. It was awesome. So I was really proud of them, and it was really impressive to see. So I think that when we bring them in October, you guys, you'll be really pleased at some of the things that they have to say and things that they have to show. So it'll be good.
That's great, and thank you for, I know we've talked a lot this year about the
MCIEA.
EA, and how
Easy for you to
that's,
say.
yeah, exactly, easy for you to say, how closely that work is tied into your goals and the work that you're doing, Craig, so it's really nice to hear what's actually happening at the ground level. So I think that's a wonderful idea to bring them in and have them share some of that work with us. I do have one announcement that I would like to make. Are you done with yours?
Mom.
Okay. So essentially, it has come to our attention that an application has been made with the Massachusetts Department of Education proposing a charter school to be located in Milford. Milford's public schools, beginning with Shining Star and extending all the way through Milford High School, are a source of pride for this committee, and we have full confidence in the collective work of our faculty, staff, and administration. There is nothing in the research on charter school performance, nor is there anything in the current application that offers any evidence that this proposed school would be in the best interest of Milford students or families. As we look forward to opening the 2019-2020 school year, this committee will maintain its focus on supporting the faculty, staff, administration, students, and families of the Shining Star Preschool, Brookside Elementary School, Memorial Elementary School, Woodland Elementary, Stacey Middle School, and Milford High School. Our community deserves nothing less. Moving right along. We now have an invitation to speak, and I see once again droves of people in the audience waiting to come up and speak with us. So I think we can tick that right off the agenda. And moving on to a much more exciting part of our agenda, introduction of some new members of the Milford Public Schools community. Mr. Vico Lucas and Ms. Carrie Taylor. We're really happy to have both of you here with us tonight. I know Dr. McIntyre was great about introducing our new faculty members, so I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so why don't you guys come up? To say I'm thrilled that both Carrie Taylor and Vico Lucas have joined the Milford Public Schools leadership team this year is, again, a great understatement. They're both, I think, fantastic educators, dedicated educators. They've both had diverse experiences in a number of different places. And I think they're going to bring kind of a wealth of knowledge, enthusiasm based on their respective positions, and just new perspectives, which I think are needed in the Milford Public Schools. So I'm going to have maybe Carrie start out by introducing herself and kind of talking about maybe some of the work you've done so far, and then maybe Vico can jump in right after.
Great. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. I'm excited to join Milford Public Schools and have been here now for 29 days. Tomorrow will be the 30th. And so I'm just excited for the work that we've started and the work that we're going to continue to do. A little bit about my background is I taught high school for 6 years, anything from an inclusion Algebra 1 class up through pre-calculus honors. And then I decided it was time to go get my master's. So I went back to school for a year to Harvard Graduate School of Education and got my master's in learning and teaching instructional leadership. And while I was there, I was really a year for me to not only learn the theory that we do in education, but also how does this theory apply in the real world. So I spent my year doing 3 different avenues. I wrote curriculum and coached a brand new high school teacher for a nonprofit organization. I worked with Dr. Heather Hill at the Center of Education Policy Research on her research on mathematical knowledge of teaching and also the mathematical quality of instruction rubric, which basically shows us how to measure quality of instruction of mathematics specifically, and I continue that work today with her. I also interned with Boston Public Schools, their central office, and really earned my supervisor director license in helping to lead that district with 125 schools under their belt. I then moved into a math coach intervention specialist role at a middle school, kind of in the area, and then I now am transitioning to Milford, where I'm really committed to look at pre-K through 12 curriculum, how do we vertically align, how do we horizontally align, and then also looking at how do we make sure that our students are achieving the mathematics that they should be achieving, and also how do we make sure that they love math class. And so in the past 29 days, I've really spent my time holding listening and learning meetings with the administration. So that has included all building principals, the director and assistant director of special education, the EL program director, the SEL director, the Title I coordinator, and I've started to meet with teachers and CTLs one-on-one to really get a view of what's working in Milford Public Schools in terms of math, what's not working for some of our teachers, and what do they need from this position in order to succeed and to grow. I've attended the MCIEA training with some of the teachers at Woodland to really get an idea of the quality performance assessments that Craig and Kevin were talking about earlier. What does that look like, and starting to dig into that work a little bit. On Monday, we held a mathematical language routines professional development with Better Lessons, where we had 22 teachers attend, K through 12, and we really started to dig into how do we support math, how do we support EL instruction, and how do we grow it. These teachers will continue this work throughout the school year as well. As the school year begins, I have 4 things that I'm working on continuing to do. So the first is, on the first 2 days of school, I've coordinated with the principals to be introduced to the entire staff, and then spent time with math department meetings if those meetings are occurring as well. I am also spending a day in every school building so that the teachers know that that is the day that they can contact me and hold one-on-one sessions. If we need more time than that, we will schedule more time than that as well. And I have plans with principals to conduct walkthroughs with them at first, and then to kind of start to do it on my own to see what is happening in the classroom, what does the instruction look like, and where do we need to go. And then finally, Craig and I have been working on putting together a math committee, so not just the CTLs, but how do we look at K-12 math instruction and really start to build buy-in from teachers and hear what do their practices look like, what does the research practices look like, and where do we need to go and make a plan for the future.
Thank you. Any members have any comments or questions? Megan?
Thank you. It was extremely helpful to kind of hear that all laid out, and hopefully this seems like not as daunting a task. Certainly coming from someone with 125 schools, you can probably name them all already. So thanks for laying out your plan. That's really helpful. To me, it's such a big job to come into the K-12. Could you talk, Carrie, a little bit about how do you look at any like existing metrics in terms of assessments or things that are currently available to you to assess how we're doing?
Yeah, so I've dug into the MCAS data a little bit, but I think that we need to look at what's happening in the classrooms with the students. And so the MCAS tells a little bit of a story. It tells us that, you know, our students are not at state level across the board, K through 12, or 3 through 12, because that's really where we get assessed. As soon as we get on board with the iReady math data, I would also like to dig into that piece. I also have dug into a survey that was given to teachers in April or May by Craig last year, and really looked at like what do the teachers say. They talked about how they haven't had math specific PD, but there's questions on what they're categorizing as PD. Is it when we bring in somebody and we spend money that they're categorizing as PD and it's not in-house? And then I've dug into a little bit of the curriculum that has been written this summer as well.
Those would be my next question. How do you look at the curriculum and how do you kind of assess that, you know, across the board, obviously, given that's such a big
Yeah, so
span.
I've done a little bit of work with the Algebra 1 and Geometry curriculum that's been written this year. And my process is to go through and look at the standards, then make sure that the standards are all being covered and being covered fully. And also to make sure that they are being covered in the way that they're meant to be covered, and not just superficially and assigning standards to things that are not actually that piece. And then we had a meeting with the associate principal and the CTL at the high school to really dig into, are we covering all the standards? I had a few questions and looked at that piece. Across K through 8, the curriculum documents are not as detailed as the high school level. So that is an area that we probably need to do a lot of work in.
Okay.
However, I want to hear from the teachers on whether or not they believe that we need to do that work
Okay.
and what they are using.
Yep. Could you talk a little bit, just I guess at a higher level, in terms of implementing change? So if you found an area or something that needs to be developed, how do you go about sort of bringing that forward? Because obviously there's a lot of people involved.
Yeah, so I think that that's going to start with the math committee.
Okay.
So having probably about 18 people around the table. The CTLs will definitely be included in that work. And then also representation from the other schools. Really getting both the teachers that like want to be on board and are engaged with this work, but also some of the teachers that are hesitant to make this change. And then the plan is for the first meeting to really be looking at like, what does a good team look like? How do we set norms as a team? How do we make sure that we know how we're going to be working together? I think that foundation is critical. I think if we don't set that and we try to dive right into it, we're not going to have lasting change. We're going to have something that's coming top down instead of something that is the teachers are believing and bringing back to their buildings.
Excellent.
The second meeting, we're talking about looking at the Milford Public Schools instructional practices that already exist. How we're going to gather that data is still a little bit up in the air. Maybe it's some walkthrough data that I've collected. Maybe it's looking at some observations that have been collected over the years, but I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like. And then the third meeting is looking at the research practices that are good, high quality, mathematical quality of instruction. What do we know, or what does the research tell us should be happening in the classrooms? And then finding the gap of what is working well, what is overlapping and we are good at in Milford, and then what are the areas that we need to improve on, and then making a priority list and next steps according to that.
Excellent. That sounds like it makes a lot of sense. I would think the curriculum component alone could be a full-time job. How do you prioritize within the K through 12 sort of band areas of focus?
So I think if we want to see lasting change, we have to start K through 5.
Okay.
Or even K through 2.
Okay.
Because those are our kids that are going to continue through the system. I think that that doesn't mean that the entire focus for the entire year is on K through 2, but I do think that we need to start there and start to make growth and development there, and then fill in the gaps as we go up.
Okay, great, excellent, thanks. And I would just offer our process sort of is like a budget, getting close to finalization around February, March. So as you think about all the things that would be helpful, from a timeline standpoint, that we're able to incorporate things for next year.
Great,
Excellent,
thank you.
Thanks.
Chris?
Welcome to the Milford School community.
Thank you.
Appreciate that you're going to be a part of it, and certainly just looking forward to periodic updates of how the math curriculum and the vertical alignment will go. So welcome.
John?
Yeah, I just want to say welcome as well, and I'm very impressed by your enthusiasm and your approach to everything in the past 29 days and moving forward. So welcome aboard, and thanks for coming.
Laura?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think I'm really happy you were able to come tonight and lay out that plan for us. Math is definitely a focus for us, obviously, for the committee, and we're really excited to have you on board, and I'm really happy to hear your plan and wish you good luck, and let us know what we can do to support you.
Thank you.
It's easy to see why Kevin is very thrilled to have you here. So thank you. I feel the same as all of my colleagues. So good luck this year.
All right, and Vico, let's just share a little bit about yourself too.
My name is Vico Lucas. I have come here directly from the nonprofit sector. My last role inside of a school was in supporting schools to grow in Springfield, Massachusetts, working through their turnaround process. I supported math. By trade, I'm a science teacher. I spent 5 years working in Louisville, Kentucky in a school system called Jefferson County Public Schools. I taught high school science. After about 4 or 5 years, I realized the impact that good leadership and a good teacher can have on turning around kids who needed a lot of help. I worked in a high needs community, and so I saw a calling to join leadership. I went to school and got my master's degree from Teachers College, Columbia University in public school leadership. I studied for about 14 months. In the midst of my study, Kentucky, along with a lot of other states in the country, were going through efforts in response to federal policy. One of them basically gave us a mandate to take our bottom performing schools and to boost them. And in that work, I connected with the people who would go on to make the new set of standards. I was involved in that really early. I got word of it because Kentucky was the first state in the union to ratify or adopt them. And so I got connected with them. I did a little bit of work with a nonprofit called Student Achievement Partners started by the primary writers, and took that to do some work with NBC Learn, where I was honored with making the first, one of the first lessons that one could see that was core aligned, so to speak. In that work, I did a lot of work in my state to help revise some of their teacher evaluation processes. I worked in my district to support greater learning, and all of that took me to, again, the nonprofit sector with a company called TNTP that brought me to Massachusetts, and ended up just, I guess, moving away from what brought me to education. Like I said, I grew up in Springfield, and my time in school was one of the greatest times in my life. There were a lot of things going on, and school was the steady ship that held me. And so I knew how important it was for me, and as a teacher, I saw how important it was for my kids. And so when I look at education, I see, something that is a teacher is as important as a surgeon is to someone who needs surgery. Like, they literally save someone's life. And so I've seen what great leadership can do, and I wanted to be a part of it. And in my work in nonprofits, it was great to have a national impact, but it got me away from what brought me to the classroom in the first place. So I've come to Milford to, restart what brought me here in the first place. So I've been here since July 15th. I do not know how many days that is.
It's 29. It was the same day.
Is it really? Awesome. Yes. So I've been here 29 days, and thanks. Yeah. I've been at Stacey, and the community at Stacey and Milford have really embraced me. I came in with our new principal, Tahan Ross. We've basically been working nonstop to make his vision come true. We just recently finished our open house today. Went really well. There were a lot of my 6th grade students that came out. We've also had popsicles with the principal, which is a sort of impromptu meet and greet with the community where they could hear firsthand what the principal wanted to do. And we've heard from the community. We've talked to students. I've shaken a lot of hands. I've greeted a lot of parents. And as far as parents, families, teachers, leaders, everyone in Milford has embraced me, and I've really enjoyed being here and meeting folks. If I could say a little bit about what to expect to come, the MCIA work that you were mentioning earlier, Alyssa and I met about that the first time we met, and essentially, I didn't get to see the whole picture, but I got the idea of generally where she was going, and the work that MCIA is doing seems like it's very much aligned to the next step in the progress of assessments themselves. And so I saw that and heard that in Alyssa's work, and I want to work with her to make that a central part of our professional development plan for the science teachers at Stacey. There's a lot that goes into making a proper science education. And I'm really happy I get the chance to sit in a position of leadership and support both the development of the teachers at the school and the development of the staff as a whole, and how we can work together and connect and make experiences better for kids. Like I said, I'm really happy to be here. We've got a lot of great things planned, and I could ramble about some of them, but it's going to get messy in the end. So, guys, thanks for bringing me here. I'm open to any questions.
Chris? No? Got the usual routine.
All right.
So Laura, mix it up.
Oh,
Yes,
Laura.
just easier
Welcome
for
to
you.
Milford. Thank you.
I
It's
know.
great to meet you. Excited to have you here and learn a little bit about your background. And good luck this year, and wish you well. And I hope to be part of Stacey. So definitely invite us to things, and we'd love to come.
Yeah, please do.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll just welcome you as well. Looking forward to some positive changes at Stacey with all this change of leadership, and I'm glad that you're going to be an integral part of it.
Thanks.
To the Milford school community, and of all the words that you said, the one sentence that stood out to me was when you said you were a teacher, you said my kids, not your students, and I think that just shows the compassion that you're going to have within our school system. So again, of everything that you said, that was the one key point that, and I think it was telling of you and your personality when you say my kids and not just students. It puts that that caring kind of connotation to it. So welcome, and looking forward to some great things.
Thank you.
I
I think to both of you, you know, the energy and the expertise that you bring is just going to be so phenomenal for us as a district, and so thank you for that. You mentioned community a few times, which really resonates with me, Mr. Lucas, because I think Milford really prides itself on its sense of community, and so I look for that kind of spirit that you'll bring to the school. Talk maybe about a couple visions for how you'll kind of drive that within the school, both the students and families.
Thank you for the question.
Sure.
One of the things that I ran into when I first came to Stacey and I got to talking with folks is it's very clear that everybody has a great feeling about the people that they work with, and like many of the folks who are a part of Stacey's community, like have come out of Milford. Like there's a lot of moms and pops and uncles and aunts. But the work of working in a middle school, it's emotionally challenging, and it requires basically full wraparound help from everybody that's involved. And so one of the first things we did was we put in place a family communication sort of policy and expectation that gives teachers the tools that they need to be able to see the community as, you know, a helping hand, and to reach out to them as such. Essentially, if you're not trained and you have to call home, like you're essentially calling home and saying, oh, your kid did X, Y, and Z. We're trying to work with teachers to make sure that they talk to parents and they let them know the positive things that are happening with kids, that they let them know that if they are to contact them, it's asking for help, to make sure that we follow up and let parents know that and leverage parents and families as the tools to support their students the way that they would want to. In schools, we can cover 7 or so hours a day. We rely on families to cover the other 17. So in a way, we work for you. And I wanted to make sure that the teachers have the tools that they need to be able to serve not just the students but the parents as well. Aside from that, we have some PBIS, positive behavior intervention strategies. I don't like using acronyms without making them for the public. But we have a lot of those tools that are going to be in place that are going to make sure that we send home messaging to parents and families about the positive things that their students are doing. We have events planned that are going to make sure we integrate the community. I personally want to create a space either in classrooms or in the school that allows the community and its spirit and the things that are important to it to be reflected in the school. We're on a big campus, and it's very, like, if you look at Stacey, you can see where Milford starts and Stacey ends, and in reality, we're all one. And I want to make sure that that's reflected in every aspect of it. So I can't say anything like specifically because we're in the middle of changing a lot of things. But know that this is going in a direction of making sure that both the community and Stacey Middle School are as closely integrated as possible, and that the gulf between us is small, if non-existent, if we can make it.
Excellent. I love both the tone and the spirit of that, and I look forward to hearing about all your successes when you both come back later this year. So thank you.
Hope
Best of
to
luck.
share 'em. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Gore, did you want to add anything over there in the corner, or are you
No, no.
you good? Okay. I didn't want to deny you of the opportunity. Okay. As well, I wanted to welcome you and thank you for being here tonight. I think, you have a big job ahead of you, and I think coming in new to a school, especially a school community, there's always that balance of what are the traditions and how do we do things here, and what are the new things and the new fresh ideas that you'll be bringing in. It sounds like between you and the other administrators, you're working on that, and Chris pointed out something that resonated with him, and I think what resonated with me was that line about communication.
Yeah.
And I think, we know, especially as kids get out of those primary years and into that middle school vast vacuum somewhere, the communication certainly drops off from children to families, but every little ounce of communication from schools to family is just so incredibly valuable. So thank you for prioritizing that among the things we'll be working on.
My pleasure. Real quick. So I'm not sure if I got here, but I've been in this work of working with schools that were in need, like basically my entire career. My first school went through turnaround its second year. I supported schools in Springfield that needed help. When I did nonprofit work, I've been here before. And the one thing I've learned is that if you want change to be lasting, it can't just be yours as a person coming in talking about things. You have to make it a part of the people who are going to be living there and being there. And so when I talk about making it a part of the community, like that's integral to Stacey turning itself around. I'm a voice and a person that gets to be here. This is Stacey and this is Milford's work. This is Stacey and Milford's community, and it's gonna be this whole community that helps turn it around. So like I'm happy to help and I'm happy to be here, but I'm as good as the folks that I can work with, and so long as they are willing and working with me, which they have been so far, and I'm positive they will in the future, we will all get to reap the benefits sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Rest up. Monday will be here soon. All right. Megan, would you like to take the lead on our 1920 school committee goals?
Absolutely, Jen.
Great.
So just for everyone's benefit, this was something we started kind of last winter. We do have a policy that says the school committee has goals, and so last January, February, we sort of worked to develop the first version of that. And so this is, round 2 for year 2 for the upcoming school year. And so everything that, the committee has in front of them was based upon the working session that we had together. So we sort of brainstormed together, and then I tried to kind of drill those down into more concrete items. So we'll just talk about them maybe broadly, and then to the extent anyone has comments or feedback, I would love to go back and incorporate those and then bring them back to you for your final review. But overall, we agreed the 3 main goals that we had established would stay the same. So long in regards to long-range facilities planning, student achievement, and communication and collaboration. And then more specifically within those, more specific areas that we wanted to focus on. And so I'll just give it one example of each. So in long-range planning, really an increased engagement with town leadership, town departments, and the finance committee to talk about sort of overall communication and planning as we move forward and talk about future years. In student achievement, really working, I think there's many components here which I think are great, but one that really resonated with me particularly was professional development for us as a committee. And so where are opportunities where we can really learn and grow? And so one of the things that we've talked about is having MASC in to work with us on specific areas. So as a committee, how can we improve? And then for communication and collaboration, we want to continue the office hours. We did hold 2 sessions last year, and I think engagement continued to increase as we had those. So we would like to do those again. And also increase engagement with not only other town departments, but various community groups. So, I think resonating with what the assistant principal just shared with us, how can we kind of better align and collaborate with other groups within our community? So I'd certainly take any questions, if there's any feedback in terms of how this reflects, what we went through together as a group. And if there's any edits, always more than willing to incorporate those. But these are presented as in draft for the committee's review.
Any members have any comments, questions? Chris?
Thank you for putting this all together. I know that it's been a work in progress, and certainly I read through it earlier today. It really didn't have much more to add. I think you've captured so much of what we're looking for as far as the important aspects of over the next year. I guess the one thing that I was wondering, and I know that I've brought it up before, and I'm not sure if it falls under the budget subcommittee or not, it's just the usage of the school choice end funds, and are there ways that we should highlight in here, just from a generic standpoint of, utilizing funds like that, or a certain part for the marketing of our schools, and just make, how do we present to parents, can we use these school choice funds for enrichment? Can we use these school choice funds for something to, again, for the betterment of our school system that we can promote out there. So again, just something that I just wanted to throw on the table.
John?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think this captures everything that we did talk about in that
Okay.
in that working session. I think you did a nice job of summarizing it and organizing it.
Okay.
As far as Chris's point, I think that's a conversation we need to have, but probably outside of the specific scope of
Right, yeah, I think it's just more of a,
this topic. Yeah.
just kind of a generic topic
Yeah.
here, but certainly drill down into it if
Yeah,
that's something that we want to pursue.
Any other members? Laura?
Yeah, I think Megan did a nice job kind of summarizing what we came up with. So I'm looking forward to participating in the office hours again. I thought maybe we promote those again this year, and I'd like to do it again. Hopefully get more people to attend, but I enjoy meeting members of our community. And I was able to attend, some of the professional development when we first joined the committee, and I thought it was very worthwhile. So I'm looking forward to participating in more learning opportunities from MASC.
Thank you. And I'll echo what I've heard other members say. I think these are really nicely done, and when I read through them, it almost feels like a job description of what a school committee member really should do. I think these are really aligned to what our roles are intended to be, and they're very targeted to areas that we've been talking about as a committee and a district. So thank you for your work on that. So have we
So I think if
officially
there's no
adopted
official
these,
other
or?
comments, I would sort of, if the group is comfortable, I would mark these as final, and I'll also confirm with Joe that he doesn't have anything, but then we could submit these as final, and we would post them to the district's website, so they'd be available for everyone. And then I would offer maybe every other month, I'll provide an update in terms of where we're tracking against these as, various components of these get worked on.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, that brings us to report of the superintendent of schools.
All right, I have 3 updates for the committee. I'm going to flip the order, just because I think, I don't know, in my head it makes more sense to flip the order.
Okay.
There's really no other valid reason. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the average class size for the Milford Public Schools. And you have a copy in your packet of the class sizes as of August 19th, 2020. The average does not tell the whole story, though, so I want to get into some details about like where we're seeing some areas of concern and some of the trends we're seeing more broadly. I want to, like across the board, actually the class sizes look pretty good right now. What we know is that we currently have 45 students, a little above 45 students either enrolled or pending in the process at the Family Resource Center. Now, if you throw the number 4,500 out in a vacuum, it's almost meaningless. But if you look, we closed the school year in 15-16 with 4,086 students. So to start the school year in 19-20 with a little over 4,500 is an increase of about 11%. Over.
What's the exact number?
It changes like moment to moment, actually. But I'd say it's like a hair over 4,500 right now. Like 45-14 to 45-20, somewhere in there.
Yep.
So we know that our numbers are up across the board. We also know that, again, we've seen the surge in population. The other place that we've really seen the surge in population, and there's kind of 2 factors at work, is at the end of 2016, the 2016 school year, Milford High School had 1,083 students. And this year, right now, if all the students who are pending actually enroll, we'd be up to 1,303, which is a pretty significant jump. So we knew that the big class was coming up, like the 2 big classes are coming up, so we kind of followed them all the way through. So we've kind of, in some places, adapted a little bit, in other places we just kind of, at the elementary level, we don't have a ton of flexibility. We had some larger class sizes, in a lot of the years. The other thing that's happening this year, though, is we're seeing a big bump in like summer enrollment at the high school level, and it's predominantly in the EL population at this point. So we're kind of watching that really closely as well. In terms of our unknowns right now, what we don't know is how many current students or families are not returning. Some people have communicated with us that they've moved or that they've, generally moved is generally why families aren't returning. And then we don't know how many additional families will enroll as of today through the course of the year. Now, Craig, you and I visited the Family Resource Center this morning. Do you want to share kind of?
Yeah, they were swamped. Honestly, there was families everywhere. I don't know how else to describe it. There was just
down there as well. It was
lines of people, and they reported having over between 50 and 100 families visiting them today. That doesn't necessarily mean they were all enrolling, but for one reason or another, they were visiting the Family Resource Center today.
And sometimes they're asking questions because we have translation services there. But the numbers, tend to be going up. But the thing is, we don't know how many families are leaving, which is going to offset that. So that's kind of that's an unknown now. We do lose a certain percentage at the beginning of every year, and it's kind of tough to track that. So one of the things we've done is we were able to hire an additional full-time social studies / EL teacher which is gonna help mitigate the class sizes in the social studies department and add additional EL sections, which is good. And I'm very pleased with the hire. I actually met the woman yesterday, or 2 days ago, and she's fantastic. We're gonna continue to watch class size numbers across the district. Where we will potentially see the most growth is probably EL students over the next month. But again, we're watching it. Right now, again, the class sizes overall look pretty good. I'm a little concerned with like some of our EL small group class sizes, both at Stacey Middle School and Milford High School, because those numbers are growing. I think this new hire helps the social studies numbers at the high school. I think what we'll probably be recommending for next year is a full-time social studies and a full-time EL person at the high school. But again, we'll watch that and track it over time. Now, an interesting thing is if you look at Brookside and Memorial, in 2016, I just want to throw this out there. 2016, Brookside ended at 514 and Memorial ended at 489. And so both schools right now are at about 480, 479, 478. Those numbers are as of August 5th, so it's probably a little higher than that. So those numbers are down a little bit. So the other thing we've got to really look at too is you've got to look at like long-term trends as well as like we're seeing a surge at the high school. And we don't necessarily always want to just overreact when we see like a particular grade level, but we want to make sure that when we're making a hire, it's going to help in the short term and in the long term. So we're kind of looking at this from a lot of different angles, and I'm popping in to see Anna Cahill and her team down at the Family Resource Center a few times a week at this time of year because I like to hear kind of what's happening. So at some point in September or maybe early October, we'll probably cross that 4,500 line because of those like 300 students that are pending, 100 have been registered. We still have 200 in process, and there's a variety of things that can hold students up, whether it's health records or just different information that kind of is part of the process. So we're trying to really put an emphasis on getting as many students started on the first day of school as we possibly can. And I think we're already ahead of the game where we have been the past few years. But, you know, you walk down to the Family Resource Center, it's a really busy place, and we're adding, you know, resources and help there. But it's hard to track, too. Like, it's hard to track because we're seeing, like, a little bit of an uptick each year. But it's got to level off at some point.
Well, one caution she did say, though, was, the Memorial and Brookside numbers seem a little low, but historically, after the first couple of days of schools, kindergarten, there's an uptick in kindergarten kids because people don't realize it or whatever the case may be, but there'll be an uptake.
So I've got Lisa Beyer. We're trying to track the attendance from a bunch of different, because like usually you watch it from October 1st to October 1st, which really doesn't tell the story with Milford because we're seeing a lot of movement during the year. So we're looking at October 1st numbers, we're looking at end of year numbers, and we're going to start to look at really summer numbers by month. And we're going to look at that over the last few years and see if we can start to see some patterns because we're definitely seeing an uptick in summer enrollments. But last year, we saw kind of unprecedented growth during the school year, which we typically haven't seen. You know, once we got like October, November, we'd get, you know, some families would come and some families would go. But last year we had a lot of students join us after October 1st. So they're all trends we're watching. And we're trying to come up with kind of plans and backup plans based on a number of different factors. We'll have a better sense probably the first 2 weeks of school because we'll know who's not coming. We'll have a better sense of who's not coming, and we'll have a clearer sense of what the real numbers are to start the year. And then we'll be watching it very closely throughout the year because again, our numbers grew. Like last year was unprecedented, and it's hard to say if that's an aberration or it's the start of a broader trend.
Laura? I just had a question. Last year we got the packet, not the averages, but just, you know, the actual class sizes. When do you anticipate that? Is that something we get in October?
We set dates for that in the contract.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons why we don't give them right now is because they fluctuate so
right.
much.
That's what.
over
So
the
you're
first
saying
couple
that
weeks.
you know after.
So probably like it'll probably be like the 1st or 2nd October meeting
Okay.
is my guess is when we'll kind of go over those numbers. The union comes in and kind of has a conversation as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think generally the elementary, I have a really good sense of the class sizes because they're kind of just generally classes. Where it shifts is really the high school level.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
So, yes, do we think that the average class size has gone up? I mean, right now, we're looking at anywhere, call it from the grade 3 to grade 8, more of that 22, call it 22, 23 range. Is it up from last year?
No, I think it's like K's a little low, but like Craig said, it's going to go up a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah, it's an anomaly. You know, if I look at 2 to, 2 right through grade 12, yeah, we're right anywhere from 20 to 23, so.
So, like the number at Milford High School is 19 point something. I rounded
Yeah.
it up to 20, but the typical class size is probably like 21 or 22, really.
Okay.
Because if you like, there's just so many different ways we kind of do classes. You
Yep.
know, at the secondary level, where the K through 5, it's really just like these are the elementary classroom sizes.
Right.
Well, the one change, I think, if everyone remembers, is the fourth grade. Fourth grade's down, because we
Because
added
we
a
added a
teacher.
teacher.
Typically, that was up around 24, maybe
Mm.
close to 25 in some cases.
So that number's a little lower than it typically
Yeah.
is. That's a good point. So that's something where,
But
a
everything
higher
else
makes a
is
difference.
generally the same.
yeah, I think we're kind of where we typically are. I think the worry that I have is if we see similar growth to last year, we're gonna have to kind of really come to the table and think about some things. But I can't say, like, I couldn't stand in front of the finance committee, the school committee, or even the leadership team and predict with any certainty that we're gonna have a year like we did last year. I just can't predict that at this point, because it's unlike anything we've seen in the past.
Is there any even informal tracking when people go to the Family Resource Center? So when you say kids are moving in at higher grades, so I'm just wondering about that in terms of if there are patterns that we should be sharing with NESDEC, if NESDEC will continue to do our projections, or is it just all over the place and we can't?
It's kind of all over the place. Like last year we saw, I think, a big push, and again, I'd have to look at the numbers, but like we saw more growth at the middle school than we typically did during the year, and we had to make some adjustments, and same with the high school. This year we're starting with a bigger faculty at the high school because we've added some positions over the last couple of years.
She did indicate it was 9th and 10th grade predominantly that
Right,
were coming
right.
in.
But again, even
I don't
when
know if that's typical though.
No, it really, the high school is a little more of a wild card, like where most of our growth obviously is the kindergarten level. Most of the
Right.
work is done. They
Right.
bring in about around 300 kids for the kindergarten level, and then it can kind of vary dramatically for a lot of different reasons. Kind of 1 through 12. We tend not to see a lot of seniors. We tend not to see a lot of juniors. But we had a few years ago. We had a lot of unaccompanied minors.
Right.
4 years ago, where that was again something that hadn't happened in Milford before, and that was a bigger issue because we didn't even have a program for them at that point. So we really had to kind of create a program around these new students.
Right.
So the numbers are higher at the high school in terms of number of kids coming in. The numbers at Brookside Memorial are down a little bit, but not dramatically so. So again, it's hard to say like long-term projections what we're gonna be looking at, and it's hard to say if we're gonna continue to see like the summer growth that we've seen like last year, and to a lesser extent the 2 or 3 years prior.
Right. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was something like in the economy that was bringing people here, if we're seeing people immigrating from other countries because they already have family here and Milford is attractive. It would just be interesting to see if any patterns emerge in that way.
I think a lot of the people are coming from other places in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
But again, I don't want to,
Right,
without actually getting
right.
into the details, just
Yeah.
kind of anecdotally, that's what we're kind of hearing. We're seeing like
Yeah.
folks coming from Framingham, from Boston, from a couple other places. So we're trying to get more detailed information so we can kind of, like, again, I don't even know if it's possible, but I'm going to see if there's any predictability to what we've seen in the last few years. And then we can kind of present to FinCom and say, hey, our numbers are this right now, but what we're seeing is, this kind of growth during the year, and we've seen this the last 3 years at these different grade levels, and we've known, like last year we had a number of teachers take on additional sections, and that kind of mitigated some of the issues we had at the high school. But again, without having something to predict it, and right now I don't think we have enough back data to really make, create a model where we could say, hey, with a reasonable amount of certainty, this many kids are going to come next year.
Thank you. Chris?
What's the BBT factor, I guess you could call it, from ninth grade, I presume, if I recall, I should say, was the biggest class bubble coming through. So do we have some sort of numbers of, or percentage-wise of kids that, ninth graders that are going off to BBT and
Yeah, so
guess how that
we
affects
do, I just don't
ninth
have it here.
Okay.
Like, I can get that for you, that's
Yeah.
very easy to get. So, we always assume a certain number of BBT students.
Right.
And off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what that number is, but
Okay.
it's pretty consistent, and regardless of the class size, I think the number stays relatively consistent. We also lose a certain number of kids to private schools at the
Right.
high school level.
Mhm.
It's a pretty typical thing, it's not unique to Milford, it happens almost in every community.
Right.
Kids will go to like private high school for a variety of reasons. I think despite that, because they started bigger, they're still going up bigger.
Okay.
So we do have that kind of,
So we're still, yeah,
we do have that kind of melt that happens,
right,
just, but I don't think the melt necessarily, because it's a bigger class, it still has a bigger impact.
still has a bigger impact, yeah. So the social studies teacher, is that a full-time or?
So it's, it's a full-time overall 1.0 FTE.
Okay,
It's
Yeah.
basically two sections of social studies, 3 sections of ELL is the way it works out.
okay, yeah. And that's something that I know that we had looked at that last year during the budget season, but that was added more recently, correct?
Mhm.
I guess, what was the change of need there? And I guess how does that affect us financially? Does it add
Yeah,
on
so it doesn't
another
have an impact on
employee?
financially, because we've had a couple maternity leaves. There were higher salaried employees that are replaced by long-term subs that are significantly lower salaried employees, and that was the majority of the offset.
Okay. Great. And then I guess the last question is, based off of this, would you consider the student-teacher ratio, what I see here, so for in 4th grade, it's 1 teacher per 22 students? Or is there some other factors that are involved here that
So,
you
yeah,
should
so,
change it up?
yeah, so the only place there's really a difference in the numbers is the high school level. Because basically what the middle school and lower did is took like your typical classes and just said like, that we have, was it 17 first grade kindergarten classes?
Yeah.
17 kindergarten classes, and basically Brookside divided by 9, Woodland, or Memorial divided by 8. They came up with a class. They came up with a class size that way. What the high school did is they gave me kind of the overall average for all the different sections that they had.
Right, yeah,
And then Josh gave me like, the typical is like, the typical class is somewhere between 21 and 22. And so the average was like 19 point something, so I put 20 up there just to
course,
kind of
yeah.
give you a ballpark.
that's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
But as far as the student-teacher ratio, is that,
The student-teacher ratio is actually lower than the class
Mhm.
sizes
Right.
because we have special ed teachers,
Mhm.
EL teachers that push in. And our ratio, I think student-to-teacher ratio is like 18 to 1, something like that.
Might even be a little
It might even be a little, maybe it's 15.6. I'd have to, it's right on
that
the
would be
DSC
good
website.
information to have.
Yeah.
I mean, the class size is one thing, but when you start breaking it down, the student-teacher ratio, now all of a
It's
sudden
actually-
that
it's
ratio
better.
and I don't wanna make it look better, but it is better, so
Yeah.
I think it's important for the public to know that, yes, the class size is 22, but there are other factors within the classroom to help, help the students, and there are some teacher aides and, other factors that are gonna help that student-teacher ratio in the learning process overall.
Megan? Kevin, I certainly agree that 1 year isn't a trend. I just want to make sure that we're capturing the data in a way that we can start to forecast it. And so we can see this many enrolled, this many actually can't, just over
Yes.
the past few years.
So
Okay.
what we do is they start a folder anytime like a student enters the Family Resource Center, and it's kind of dated, and they can follow through, like when they bring something in, like the health forum, it's dated so they can kind of track it through. So what we're trying to do is not only determine like what we're seeing in terms of like from a timeline perspective,
Mhm.
but also like the percentage of folders that get started versus the percentage of folders that get completed, and not only broadly, but like is it different at the secondary versus the elementary level?
Excellent.
Is there a
Okay.
higher yield rate at the elementary level than the secondary level? That kind of thing.
I think that'll be really useful.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think along the lines of the comment that you were making, and also as we start to have discussions with FinCom, my understanding is there's some significant housing opportunities on the horizon. Just
Correct.
incorporating all of that into the discussion so that,
Which the developers say there's no kids coming into the.
well, right.
And we're in a,
Two, I think.
yeah.
2 per project.
And we're in a different world because even like I forget what it's called, it's Country Club, kind of across from where the Dairy Queen
Oh,
is.
yeah, Milford Country Club, yep.
And years ago there was no kids there, and now we have a
Hmm.
lot of kids at that
100%,
bus
yeah.
stop. So I think some of the family dynamics are a little different. Like there we have a lot of grandparents who are raising children, or have taken over guardianship. So I think we're seeing some family dynamics shift some of the trends that would have historically been like a condo or apartment complex. I don't know if you ever just saw 2 kids in an apartment complex.
That's the
But-
forecast I heard.
Yeah, but I think some of those family dynamics are shifting, and so we're seeing like different kinds of populations. And when there was a big project a few years ago, and I kind of did like a little research into it, and there's like different formulas they use based on, and all of them seem very low to me.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's like the builder's formulas because it's more
Sure.
palatable to the community.
Sure.
So that's going to be tricky too, but we're watching that as well.
But I think having that hard data at some point is
Yeah.
gonna be really helpful
Well,
as we start to have these discussions.
100%. I think
thanks.
we've got like Lenny Morcone has like a good sense of like how many kids we're picking up in each, and we have everybody's addresses too.
Sure.
But we have a good sense of how many kids we're picking up in each like complex,
Yep.
and so we might be able to project that out based on the type of what
Yep.
what type of mix it is
Price
in terms of-
point and
in
different
bedrooms
things.
and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Per
Thanks.
number of bedrooms per unit and those types of things.
Okay. Thank you.
So
If I can, the thing that I guess I've noticed is that, we're pretty flatlined what the rate was, in general, we bring 1 student per year for the last 30 years or so. But suddenly we're seeing a jump of 200 or 300, and
Yep.
As we keep pointing out, one or 2 years isn't a trend, but a few more years, if it's still up there,
we're pretty damn close to a trend.
it's
right
become
now.
a trend, yeah.
Yeah.
And without figuring out why, I don't know that we need to figure out the whys, but this is what we have, and if this is what we continue to have, we have to, manage it or do what we can with it.
Correct. And again, I think the other thing I point to is our Brookside and Memorial numbers are lower than they were 3 or 4 years ago. Not substantially, but again, I think we're going to dig into these numbers a lot more because, like John just said, we haven't had to historically because it's usually like honestly, the joke was just 1 kid a year,
Yeah.
but the fluctuation was somewhere between 35 and 50 kids for like 14 grades, including preschool, which is like 1 or 2 kids a class, which is very manageable.
Yeah.
If you're talking a couple hundred, that's different. That's much different. If you're talking, student populations where they require specialized instruction, that's that's a completely different ratio too. So class size.
Thank you for the update.
Yeah.
Good one to start with.
Yeah.
On to the next two.
All right. Next up is an update on the school choice survey. We've contracted with Thomas Beer, Dr. Claudia Rinaldi, and Richard Fournier to execute a school choice survey in the fall. And Dr. Claudia Rinaldi is one of the professors we've worked with at LaSalle College, and she's been, I think, a great partner. And Thomas Beer, who's going to be the lead on that project, I've met with several times, and I think the way he's going to approach the work is going to give us it's going to yield a lot of really good information. So the survey team has met with our central office team and our data manager, and are in the process of collecting data, creating instruments, and finalizing timelines. The plan is to survey stakeholders in October, analyze the data, and present to the school committee on either the 5th of December or the 19th of December. The target date is the 5th, but sometimes the best laid plans of mice and men will put in the fall back date to the 19th, but the goal is December 5th to have this done. They're going to reach out to any family of a child who has made a choice other than the Milford Public Schools, and they will engage with families from the district as well. The process will involve surveys, focus groups, and a review of our relevant historical data. So I've already given them all of our presentations that have been done on school choice over the last several years, the different, the data in terms of student enrollment and population, and, the different, groups and where they've gone. And so, they're reaching out to the DESE and working closely with Lisa Beyer, our data manager, to make sure they get all the contacts. They're going to make an initial reach, and we're going to do some publicity around it. And then they're going to follow up individually with folks that don't respond. And obviously, we can't make people respond to a survey, but we can be aggressive is the wrong word, but I think make multiple touches to make sure that we've done our due diligence to try to capture as many people as we can.
Out of curiosity, how much does the school survey cost?
So we're contracting with this group for $4,800.
Wow.
And the only additional cost that we would incur as part of the agreement is we have a contract right now with SurveyMonkey that we probably have to expand that contract, which is going to be a minimal.
It's actually far lower than I expected.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it would be more than $10,000, so, okay.
Great.
So, and I think we've got the right people doing it, because they're very bright, and they're very knowledgeable about education generally. So I think they're coming in with a good context.
Kevin, will the team bring the results, or will you be
The team will
sharing?
bring the
Great,
results,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
they're gonna present.
okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And it may just be Thomas, I don't know if all three of them will come, but some, either Thomas or the whole team will present, Thomas Beer. Alright, and the last thing I have is kind of what's coming this year. And I want to just do a quick presentation, and this should be in your packet as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what have we accomplished in the last 3 years? And this is one of the things we kind of discussed as a leadership team when we went on a leadership retreat. And if the committee will indulge me, I just kind of want to go through these, because I think, as a committee and as a district, we've accomplished a great deal. We've opened a new Woodland Elementary School and restructured district grade configurations. We became a one-to-one device environment in grades 3 through 12. We've expanded our social emotional learning offerings and additional internal and external counseling supports. We've expanded the capacity of our English learner programming and developed service models to better meet the needs of the students. Project Lead the Way courses are offered in grades 3 through 12, and we hope to further expand the program over the next several years. We have SST math implementation starting this year from grades K through 5. We've developed a mentoring program, which I believe is second to none, and I give Craig a lot of credit for that work, to a 3-year program connected to new educator needs and our strategic initiatives. We're going to start iReady implementation after the pilot in grades 1 through 5, and we're already in discussions on what we're going to do at the secondary level to provide more interim assessment data that the teachers can really use in real time. We've expanded middle school athletics and extracurricular activities. We've added additional professional development and collaboration time for teachers, which is really going to kick into gear this year. We've added 5 additional hours to the contract. The partnership with MCIEA, which I talked about a little earlier, and the development of performance tasks across the district. Our teachers are really excited about this, and I think, I don't want to steal Dan Cody's thunder, but he was talking about one of the projects, and he said, every kid was excited and engaged when they did this particular project, and when you see it, you'll understand why. But I think it's really kind of a game changer in terms of what we're doing from a curriculum and instruction perspective, because we don't put enough emphasis on engagement when we talk about things like MCAS scores. Implementation of early college programming at Milford High School and receiving the early college designation from the state. Expansion of career-focused programming, including the business and banking program and the building trades program. We completed the data quality project through review of our X2 student management system, and we have data, pretty close to 100% data quality right now, and consistent rules of engagement for entering data. Additional teaching and learning supports, including instructional coaches, EL coordinators, instructional technology integration specialists, and you met Carrie Taylor tonight, the math curriculum director. A summer lunch program partnership, and again, they've served, I think, close to 15,000 lunches again this summer. Leadership Academy through MHS Athletics, which is being replicated across the state, the region, and the country. And the E-rate grant, which rebuilt the technology infrastructure across the district. So there's a lot going on, and it continues to go on this year. All right, so I'm working from 2 different computers here, you can bear with me. There we go. So where are we going? So this year we're going to engage in the development of a new strategic plan, continue focus on student learning and growth, and continue to work on the long-range education facilities plan, as well as some schedule shifts that I think are taking place this year that are going to have an impact. And Vico Lucas started to talk today about what the reimagination of Stacey Middle School is going to look like. So the development of a new strategic plan, and the goal is to complete the work at the close of the 1920 school year from the implementation of fall 2020. So the old plan ends this year at the close of the school year. We'd like to kick the new plan off right when the new school year begins. During the leadership retreat, there was discussion about developing and linking a portrait of a graduate to the next strategic plan. And Craig, I don't know if you want to touch base on what
Sure.
a portrait of a graduate is.
So, Caridad, Lopez, and Cicely Tucker and I, we led the leadership team through, I guess, the beginning stages of what a portrait of a graduate is. And what a portrait of a graduate is, basically, what skills do we want all students to have when they graduate Milford High School? So we started to work on that, but not only that, what skills do we want all kids to have when they come out of Stacey Middle School, Woodland, Brookside Memorial, all the way down, and linking them together. And then once we have what those portraits look like, then we're going to look at developing a strategic plan based on those kind of pictures of what students are. So hopefully our strategic plan will move us in the right direction so that every student, when they graduate, regardless of whether they're an EL student or a special ed student, they'll have all of these skills that'll make them successful in the real world. So that's the work that we're kind of moving towards this year in our leadership meetings. And then we're also hoping to bring community into this, students into this, and teachers as well. So.
All right, so again, a continued focus on student learning and growth, and Carrie Taylor kind of gave you a little bit of a peek into what the work that she's doing around mathematics. But again, expansion of the ST math program to our K2 buildings. Some of this is repetitive. Full rollout of the interim assessment tool, iReady. The shifts in schedule at Brookside Memorial and Milford High School to better meet students' needs. Carrie Taylor spoke about some of the work she's going to be doing around alignment and instructional practices. The first year of the early college cohort for current 8th graders in partnership with Framingham State and Mass Bay is going to kick off. We're offering a new senior seminar at Milford High School. Expansion of the MCIA performance assessments, including a K2 pilot group. The state had asked the MCIA consortium to try to pilot some of this work because there's no accountability really. What is there, 83 K2 schools in the district?
Something
Or in the
like
state?
K2, 83.
Something like that, yeah, it's a low 80s. So we're engaging in that work. And how many teachers are jumping in on that, Greg?
We had close to 20 between the two schools, so we had a good group.
Expansion of early college offerings through LaSalle in mathematics and world language this year, and adding a second course in Project Lead the Way, both in the biomedical sciences as well as computer science at Milford High School. So, this kind of gives you a very broad view of it, but there's going to be a lot of work related to, data analysis, using the iReady data, a lot of kind of collaborative work around MCIA, developing performance assessments, and a lot of connected professional development that's going to kind of make a lot of this stuff come to life. The long-range education facilities plan, I received feedback, and thank you for everybody that provided feedback on the draft plan from central office administrators, school committee members, and long-range education facility plan members. Work is beginning on the final version of the first draft. I expect that to be done sometime in mid-September, so that'll be kind of the first iteration of this process and this plan. Kathy and I met with Rick Filani and Zach Taylor in August to discuss town finances and upcoming projects. Zach will provide an overview of the town finances and answers questions at the first October school committee meeting, so we've scheduled them there. We're having a meeting with the finance committee subcommittee in September, and we'll schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the long-range education facilities plan, either with the subcommittee or the broader group, depending on what the pleasure of that group is. And then next steps will include developing realistic timelines for submission of a statement of interest and building community support for future projects. Schedule shifts at MPS. Craig's going to talk about the K2 level, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. And I know Josh Otlin has presented on the new schedule at the high school. But again, I'm going to focus on the high school, and then I'm going to have Craig, when he talks, speak about the K2 level. But the high school really is to increase the frequency of long blocks to support more hands-on project-based learning, decrease interruptions to instruction for class meetings and special programming, support participation in our large-scale service groups such as Best Buddies, Peer Mentors, National Honor Society, and Global Citizens with longer meeting times, allow students regular access to a variety of college and career readiness program, give all students consistent time each week during the school day for independent work, library research, and teacher meetings for makeup work or extra help, and provide 11th and 12th grade students with the option to participate in work-based learning such as internships or apprenticeships. And finally, the reimagination of Stacey Middle School. And Craig and I and Tahan Ross, the new principal, have been talking to a few groups that do this work nationally. And, and I think there's a number of different paths we can go down. But it's going to be a multi-year process, so I don't want to say we're going to open Stacey Middle School up and it's going to be completely different next year. it's probably gonna be a 3 to 5 year process. But the goal is to review these models that are out there that can support greater student engagement, choice, and voice. The target for this first year is really implementing schedule shifts that will move Stacey to one bell schedule. And this is critical because it's gonna give us a lot of flexibility with faculty and space. And right now, because each grade level is on a different schedule, we can't use like EL teachers across grade levels or special ed teachers across grade levels. So I think it's gonna maximize our human resources and allow us a lot more space flexibility as well. And then future goals again include examining offerings, instructional practices, and academic structures. And again, I see this as probably a 3 to 5 year process, but our big goal in year one is really to get that single bell schedule and maybe get to some work around electives or some structures, but I don't want to be overly ambitious because I'd rather do it right than do it quickly. And that's it.
All right, questions, comments? Mr. Erickson?
Comments, I guess. That's quite a lot of information that you presented in a short period of time. I think it's really noteworthy on all the things that this district has accomplished in the last 3 to 4 years that you highlighted. And, I don't think we could move forward with what you have planned without having accomplished that. So I think we're just continuing to improve this district in so many ways. And, again, it's been a long work in progress, and it continues. And I'm really happy to hear your vision.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Laura?
I just thank you for sharing all that information, putting it all in one place. I think the Flex Block, I'm really excited about that and providing our students with some of those work-based learning opportunities. I think the career skills that they can gain, but also the, soft skills that they can gain. Our 11th and 12th grade students will be better prepared for the real world, and I think that's really important to note. Some of the skills like, just like the professionalism and communication and all those workplace skills that they'll get from that. So that brings me to the senior seminar. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so in the past we've had like a sophomore seminar,
Okay.
and one of the things we felt is that I think a lot of the stuff that we did in the sophomore seminar will really shift into the senior seminar
Oh, and
because
that's
it's really just
okay.
it's interviewing skills,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
resume writing, it's
Got it.
Communicate, like a lot of the soft skills you were just talking about. So a lot
Right.
of that work, because we just felt like it was more timely.
Yeah.
And instead of offering it to everybody, we're going
Mhm.
to kind of target who we're offering it to as well.
Yeah. And that ties in so the students who may be attempting to go out on, internships or apprenticeships.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Or students who are going maybe directly into the
The
workforce,
workforce
who
after.
are really need to get that resume together and really need to, understand like what does it mean to go on an interview.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue to work with. You met Paul Linsky last year. He's been a great resource for us.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, we've got a lot of employers that are dying to work with us because there's not enough skilled workers to fill a lot of the positions that are out there. And I think there's real opportunities not only for our kids who are going to college, but our kids who are going right to the workforce to really have like a very successful and lucrative career.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah.
give them some of the right tools to kind of get there.
Yeah, I think this schedule change really makes a huge impact.
And it sounds silly, but it really
Mhm.
makes like some of the feedback that I think high schools generally get from employers is that it's very difficult to do internships because like so many schools have like rotating schedules and it's 45 minutes at a time. So we've almost created opportunities where kids can go out for
Right.
longer periods of time and have a more authentic experience.
Yeah, I think it's great. And then just on the strategic plan, are you thinking with the Portrait of a Graduate, is that just is that a 3-year plan or is it?
I think it's something we'll talk about whether we do
Okay.
3 or 5 year.
Okay.
We've gone back and forth with, I think,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to think, when Bob was here previously, I think we had a 5-year and we had a 3-year plan. So I think we're gonna take some feedback and some
Okay.
input from people and say, do you wanna go 3 or 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges with 5 years is sometimes it's harder to project,
Mhm.
like, what's happening and some things that we find out that, hey, this is like a kind of a dead end,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of builds out 5 years.
Mhm.
But it's an intensive process too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we want to go through it every 3 or 4 years as
Yep.
well, but we'll talk about it.
And our Portrait of a Graduate may look different, even in that short amount of time.
Correct. So,
Okay.
and we may learn some things by going through it once
Mhm.
and then realizing, gosh, if we focus more on this, we're going to have better outcomes or more
Mhm.
robust curriculum or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I guess, thanks, it's definitely helpful to see it sort of cohesively presented, but I just appreciate your updates because I feel like we've been well informed of if not all of these, so it's helpful to see it in one place, but I appreciate that you've sort of kept us informed, throughout the year, and I look forward, certainly to seeing the next version of the strategic plan. I guess maybe just one comment on communication. I think, Mr. Lucas indicated as well, it's just so important, especially as we think about change. And so I would just encourage you to encourage your leadership team to make sure we're doing that. And just in relevant, as we think about what's coming this year, as we think about the new school year, just how we communicate that to families. And I don't think we do it consistently across the district. And so as we look to next year, I would just like to think about a better plan where we sort of have families know as they leave the school year what to expect in terms of what they're going to learn about the next school year, and whether it's orientations or homeroom or whatever the information is, just so we have kind of a plan as a district for how that will go.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Just on the reimagination of Stacey, I know you mentioned there's a 3 to 5 year timeline associated with that. Is there reasons that are like block and lay on there in terms of like why it's 3 to 5 and what are some of the gating items associated with that?
So I think we really want to engage the faculty in the reimagination process. So I think, Vico made a great point. You don't really want to say like, this is my vision and you're going to follow it or else. You really need to get like everybody kind of on board with what you're doing. And I think one of the things they're doing this year with the new leadership team in place is just, there's so many things to just like kind of learn the community, learn what's working, learn kind of what isn't working. So, and Tahan's great, and he was very enthusiastic. He's like, let's start now. And I said, well, maybe it might make sense to kind of get through a year and really kind of make this change to the schedule, which is considered difficult work. It sounds, again, simple, but sometimes like just changing a schedule can take a long time. But I think, feedback I've heard from the faculty is I think most people are on board with trying to get to like a one-bell schedule at Stacey. So I don't think it's impossible, but there's always like, I think 90% of the work is easy, and the last 10% takes a really, really long time.
So it's more like more of an incremental growth.
And I think, we're expanding some of the work we're doing at MCIA at the middle school, and I think that could become part of that reimagination process. And there's a number of groups we've been kind of talking to that maybe support us in that work. And I think it's worth like our school team kind of vetting them, our faculty feeling comfortable with them, because we may love like a particular group, and they come to the faculty, and the faculty is like, I'm not as in love with them as you guys are. And I think for the change to really be lasting is I don't think you want to do it. I think you want to be thoughtful about it. Because I've got a lot of great ideas. I talked to a lot of faculty members at Stacey. They've got a lot of great ideas. But I think we want to come up with something cohesive where, like, when students come and families come to Stacey Middle School, they know what the experience is going to be like.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Great. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to add also a thank you for sharing all of the things that have happened and some of the upcoming goals. And I think working in this field, I see a lot of things coming down from the Department of Education, and many of the things that I think are already solidified in Milford, early college, internships, some of the vocational planning, portrait of a graduate, PBIS, those are things that DESE is pushing out now and offering opportunities for lots of districts and financing in some cases to say, hey, do you want to start planning some of these things? And when I think about some of these things, they're already happening here. So I think we have a lot of foresight and a lot of forethought and planning from our central administration. And, I think what is really helpful to see now is taking those big ideas and then looking at boots on the ground and looking at what Kerry's going to do for us in terms of instruction, the MCIEA, and the types of instructional opportunities that our students are going to have. And the other thing that I do think about is we sit in this room and we approve different types of conferences, and I see our administrators going all over this country, and to think when you talk about reimagining Stacey, you're talking about calling on national models and things like that, and you're stretching us outside of Metro West and Worcester County, and I think that says a lot for where we're going to be going. So thank you for the work and effort that you're putting into things.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, so pivoting off what Jen said, is there a way to socialize that kind of where we are at the moment, or what our accomplishments, and can we push that out to the community?
Yeah, I think we're going to do it in three, or I'm going to do it in 3 ways, and I think I'll encourage administrators to do the same. Is I think the more we get involved in this work, we'll share it on Twitter, we'll do it on Milford TV, we'll do
Yeah,
it via
okay.
monthly updates.
Well, that's what I was
It's funny, I
talking
looked at my August monthly update from last year, and it was like 3 pages long, and I said, people just wanna know when school starts, where the buses are, and
What's for lunch?
and what the schedules are, what like the school schedule. So I basically just like gave a very bare bones, like, these are the 3 things that are kind of important on everybody's mind, and then I think as we get into like the school year, we'll start really sharing
Yeah,
that
but
stuff
that's
out.
really good stuff. It's really good content, so I don't want to ignore pushing that out to the
And we'll
community.
put this on the website as well, because we're putting all our presentations up on the website so people can access them.
Great.
But yeah, no, it's a good point, because we want to make sure that, people are aware that we're kind of engaging in this process. We have a leadership team that I think is really excited about it. I think we have a faculty that's raring to, like, Jen mentioned boots on the ground, and the enthusiasm from the faculty of Stacey, I should have mentioned this in the announcements, but Tahan ran like a leadership retreat for the faculty. And we probably had 60 faculty members that just volunteered to come and just talk about some of these different things that they're trying to accomplish this year at Stacey, which I thought was incredible. And I had an opportunity, it was the same day we did first year teacher orientation, so I could only stay for about a half an hour. But like, I just had an opportunity to talk to a number of the faculty members, and like they were like beaming and glowing and excited about kind of engaging in this work. So I want to make sure that we do it together, and we don't say like, we want these 3 things to happen and they're non-negotiables, because my experience so far in leadership is, if I had a monopoly on good ideas, we'd all be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And the ideas come from everybody, and we really want to bring everybody to the table to make it work.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
yeah,
Thank you.
that's where we're going.
Okay. I think that brings us to report of the Assistant Superintendent.
Oh, thank you. Alright, so in your packet, everyone, there's 3 schedules: Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C. Those schedules are going to be the new Brookside and Memorial schedules. There's 3 of them because one's the kindergarten schedule, one's the 1st grade schedule, one's the 2nd grade schedule. Really, the only differences between the 3 different schedules are the periods when lunch, recess, and the SEL block happen. So that's what's in your packet, but let me explain a little bit more. First, I'd like to give credit Lisa Burns, Rachel Driscoll, their staff members, and Eric Elmore, Lisa Firth, and their staff members for the continuous conversations they've had about scheduling, about recess, about the SEL needs of their students. I think as a district, we spent a lot of time devoted to growth-focused instruction at all different levels, but it's been particularly troublesome to hear about some of the social emotional challenges that students have, especially at the K-2 level. And I think, in retrospect, we really tried to focus the last scheduled shift that we made probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years ago now, on just that instructional piece. And I think we're starting to see the need for, it's becoming more clear to us that we need to shift some more downtime for students, just so students have some more social time to kind of figure out how to work with each other relationship-wise, without necessarily teachers just pinpointing their every move. So that's one thing that we're hoping to see out of this, but just so kids can play for a half hour and then come back and let's hit the books once we come back. But that's what we're hoping to get out of this, for one. But as we indicated last spring, the goal was really to kind of increase to 30. They were pushing 15, maybe 20 minutes, but it was more like 15 minutes for all students. So they did come back with a schedule that, as I showed you, met that goal while losing very few instructional minutes. So the way that they accomplished that was that they didn't do anything to the number of periods. So the number of periods stay the same. They ended up carving 5 minutes away from the first 6 periods, and 7th period stayed the same. So the first 6 periods go from 45 minutes, what they were last year, to 40 minutes. So basically, they lost 5 minutes on every class period. But the other thing that they gained was an SEL block in the middle of the day, because that was another thing that we've been trying to do, is trying to figure out a way. We have this second step curriculum. We're looking for different ways to bring enrichment to the K2 schools, but we don't have anywhere in the schedule where there's any kind of flexibility for that. So we're hoping that at the very least we're going to start with some SEL, some second step lessons and units during that block. We'll maybe pilot responsive classroom during that block. But then also looking at, geez, how do we bring some STEM activities in and maybe get those going during those blocks, or some other enrichment opportunities for students. So there's a lot of possibilities for that additional 20 minutes that we have. But I think we're going to take this year and kind of evaluate how the schedule's going, see what recess is looking like, and take a look at that SEL block and see in our next budget cycle what can we add to even make it even better. So I don't know if anybody has questions about it, but I think it's a great change for the schools, and I think students, parents, teachers will be happy.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, we basically doubled their recess time.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's tremendous. I think the free play and the social time for our students is really important. And they, like you said, Craig, they develop those skills like, you know, problem solving and, you know, how to cooperate and learn to share and all that stuff. So I think it's really important at the lower elementary level and at those grades. So I'm really excited for that. And I know my own daughter will be really excited.
Hmm.
Board members?
Yeah, I
Meg?
think it's a very positive change, Craig. I think not only the introduction of the SEL, where we have so much to offer, and I think it has the potential for so much impact on the kids, but just the recess time and potential reduction of future disciplinary measures because they had that time to be outside and, you know, run around. And I can just share, I shared it with my 7-year-old, and his face was like lit up like you couldn't believe. So they crave that time, so I think it's fantastic we'll be able to offer it.
Good.
Great. Thank you for your work on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Craig's playing the role of Kathy Perry. so-
Okay, so
All right.
you're in charge of all the money tonight.
That was good.
That would bring us to approval of the warrant.
Okay, so you have in front of you 13 warrants for a grand total of $1,221,012.07.
Okay, so we'll need a motion. Motion by John, second by Meg, all in favor?
All right, you also have for your information personnel update from all the new hires from the last meeting to this meeting. And
3-pager, you've been very
yeah,
busy.
we have been very busy this summer. And then finally, there is a gift that does require a vote.
This is a very generous gift given to us by the Celebrate Milford Committee. The name of the gift is Milford High School Makerspace Lab, and the purpose of this gift will be to purchase equipment for the high school Makerspace Lab. And this is a gift for a total of $5,000. Again, this is from Celebrate Milford. I don't know, do you mind, Craig, just explaining briefly what a Makerspace Lab is?
Yeah, sure. It's for the high school, right?
Yes.
So at the high school level, this makerspace it's not going to be set up like a regular classroom. It's going to be set up with all kinds of materials, tools that kids need to kind of explore technology and engineering. So if you think about, I don't know, the way I think about it, I guess, is that your dad's kind of workbench. You know, you get tools hanging on the walls, or kind of nuts and bolts in different bins, and anything that you could think of that kids could use to just take their thoughts and engineer something kind of cool. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that Josh had written in this is it will also advance hands-on project-based learning, which is just
Yep.
education speak for exactly what you just talked about. he also talked about it serving as a cornerstone for the emerging course pathway in advanced manufacturing. So it was really well thought out what Josh had asked for, and we're very grateful for this donation. So I think we need a motion to accept the gift. Motion by Chris, second by Jim. All in favor? Great, thank you. That brings us to future agenda items.
Maybe just a question, Jen. Kevin, your goals for the upcoming school year, just a timing on that?
So say that again, I'm sorry.
Your goals for the upcoming school year.
Yeah, I can present them in September, October, whenever you guys want them.
Well, maybe just to piggyback on that, I have kind of an
Great.
outstanding communication with Dorothy
Okay.
Presser, so this will serve as a reminder to me to get back
Okay.
in touch with her.
It'd be
I'll
great
do
to
that
align
tomorrow.
those, Jen, and
I
just,
think so,
okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
So
Thanks.
I'll follow up with her
Okay.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anyone else with the future agenda item? Okay. I'm sure we have many other future agenda
We
items
do.
sitting out there
We do.
that
We're-
we'll be
We're gonna
working
have
towards.
a full boat this year,
Okey-doke.
so you got that to
All right.
look forward to.
Moving on, do we have any old business to address? Chris?
Two things.
Yes.
One directed, actually, kind of more directed to you, Craig. 8th grade summer reading, or just summer reading in general. I know actually I reached out to you, had a few questions, and was able to actually get those answers off the website. So thank you very much for actually making sure that the website had those answers even before you were able to respond back. So I should have done my searching before. In regards to the actual topics, I think one thing, and my daughter who's in 8th grade, so she's doing that reading, pretty heavy topics this year. So I think that's just something to look at and consider in the future potentially. I think right now we're talking as a parent, unless as a committee member, but you know, it was pretty heavy duty topics as talking to my daughter of what the book was about. You know, I think that almost that, you know, is summer reading just more for enjoyment and just to keep them going, and I was just kind of surprised at the storyline within the couple of the books that my daughter's reading. So.
Can I respond or no?
Yeah.
All right, I don't want to get out of line yet.
That's your present yourself.
Behave
Yeah.
yourself.
Chris, I don't disagree with you, and I've had those over the last week or two. The 8th grade teachers and I have had those discussions about, you know, kind of the book topics and when is it appropriate to read a book like that? Because maybe the storylines are great, but you know, over the summer when there are kids with no support, the kind of what's happening during the books and the topics that the books bring up, I think they'd be better served during the school year.
Exactly.
So we've had those discussions, and I think you're exactly right. The point of summer reading, you know, is really to get kids to just read and enjoy what they're reading. So we've talked about different ways to make that happen too, and one of the best ways to make that happen is choice. So when you kind of make this summer reading program and you're directing kids what to read, not all kids are going to like the books that you choose. So it's something that we I think over the last couple of years have tried different ways of making adjustments to the summer reading program. And I'll certainly take your feedback and feedback that I've had from other parents too, and we'll just make improvements for next year too. So thank you.
Thank you. And
That was number one.
that was number one. Second one, budget subcommittee. I guess I wasn't sure where we landed on that. I know that we when we discussed subcommittees back in last spring, there was many of us that wanted to get on the budget subcommittee. So we talked about maybe is it possible to dissolve the budget subcommittee and have it full committee as we lead up into you know, the full budget season. I think that, you know, we weren't sure if it was going to be legal to do that, but I think we just, none of us, including myself, took the lead on checking in on that. So I'm happy to check in and take the lead on it to see if it is a legal thing. But again, if that is something that, you know, the rest of the committee feels that it would benefit us, as again, usually we sit around on a Saturday in early January and we have to have a lot of information download. Would it be beneficial if we all sat around in smaller segments together and leading into the full budget season? So again, you know, first got to see if it's possible, and the other is obviously see if we you know, can agree to that style of committee.
I can make that a future agenda item if we want to discuss it once we get an answer, if it's feasible.
Yeah, who would you reach out to, Chris? Would you reach out to Charles or Jerry?
I think both Charles, Jerry, and then obviously the MSC.
Oh, MASC.
MASC, yeah, I think they would, I think the MASC would probably be my first call, see what they have, and go from there.
Well, I think you, I don't know that Charles serves the role that Jerry did, he was town council, which is also school committee council, so I don't know that you would necessarily reach out to Charles, but definitely Jerry.
Okay, very good.
You know, and the question though is if we're gonna meet in smaller groups, can the full committee, you know, make all of these? Maybe we can figure out if we can post a subcommittee, if there's enough interest, change it to a full committee meeting,
Right.
you know, based on, you know, people's schedules at the time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, not to get into a whole agenda item, but I think at some point maybe we can talk about pros and cons of one model versus another. And I think maybe we also want to talk about pros and cons of the FinCom Educational Subcommittee. And I think we have talked about it around this table. Have those meetings been valuable? And do we feel like it's beneficial to meet with a smaller, they have a very large group, and sometimes it doesn't always feel like what the small group is sharing with us or hearing from us is conveyed as presented to the large group. It's a lot of information to take in, and so we may want to kind of, when we make our decision about what we'd like to do, we may want to talk with the FinCom and see what makes more sense for our two boards to work together moving forward.
So I would recommend just maybe having a discussion in September for the 2021 budget process, maybe just overall.
Okay.
Do you want to do that? Does that seem reasonable?
Great.
Yes. Anyone else with any old business? Okay, then that brings us to adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Chris, motion by Chris, second by Meg, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.